life just trying to get by, just trying to put bread and soup on the table, fill up your tank of gas so you can get to work or get to where you need to be, take care of your family emergencies. There's no bailout for you. You've done a good job running your life, for the most part, most of you. You've managed to keep going in spite of the leeches I call the Federal Reserve System, or the bank gangsters, sucking the lifeblood out of America. Well, I want to make a proposal. They say, oh, things are looking like depression, we're going, jobs going away overseas, substandard pay, people can't pay their mortgages on the amount of money the jobs that they're getting pay. I've got a solution. Let us all, since the Federal Reserve has now set the precedent and Congress has given a go ahead, do what you got to do, okay on it, they've set the precedent to bail out anybody, no matter how bad a job they did. Well, let's bail out all of us, even those of us who've done a relatively good job in these turbulent times. Let us instruct our Congress critters that they bail out. What do I mean by bail out all of us? What I mean is we instruct our Congress critters to give us, those that have done a mediocre or fairly well-to-do job, let us instruct our Congress critters that they bail us out. All our credit cards with Federal Reserve notes, those paper things you fold and you put in your purse or you put in your wallet, those things that are based on no gold or silver anymore. These things. Yeah, let's tell them, hey, take these things, pay off all our debts, pay off our credit cards, pay off our home mortgages, pay off everything. Yes, pay off your credit card, pay off your neighbor's credit card, pay off the down and out guys that all they got left is a credit card. They're already homeless, their cards are maxed out, they can't get a motel, they're living out of their car. Pay off everybody's home mortgage, pay off their debts with Federal Reserve notes. Just keep the printing press. They're going overtime anyway. They don't even print the money now. They just go click, click, click on a computer, and there's billions or trillions of dollars to the bank gangsters, the Wall Street people who have triggered this economic decline because we have allowed the Federal Reserve, which violates Article 1 of the Constitution. You know that section that says nothing but gold and silver shall be minted in the United States? So we have a duty to put America right. But how do you do that when your Congress doesn't listen to you? Remember Bob Schultz? He's the guy that starved himself for nearly 30 days on 10th and Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C. One congressman would listen to his petition, and then he reneged and backed out. The IRS agreed to have a meeting. Then they reneged when they saw media was going to cover the meeting. So, since the Federal Reserve set up the system to bail out AIG and bail out their favorite bank gangster guys that put cash in their congressional re-election funds, bail us all out. Are we supposed to be equally treated under the law? Isn't the Constitution supposed to affect us all equally? So why should these bank gangsters on Wall Street get special privileges? I don't see that they should. So pay off your mortgage, pay off my mortgage, pay off everybody, your neighbor's mortgage, and for the renters that don't have a mortgage, let's order the Federal Reserve to pay today 1 year's rent paid in advance. So even the renters that don't feel they have anything to gain by supporting this, they get 1 year's free rent. Of course, we will have to require that people not take a lien out on the property that just got paid off with Federal Reserve notes for 1 year. Otherwise, people would simply go out and indebt themselves again and blow the money like a drunken sailor.
What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning? Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning. Shave his belly with a rusty razor, shave his belly with a rusty razor, shave his belly with a rusty razor early in the morning. Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning.
We'll put him in a longboat till he's sober, put him in a longboat till he's sober, put him in a longboat till he's sober early in the morning.
Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning.
This is William Wagener coming to you from Santa Maria, home of the Michael Jackson Inquisition. And I guess I'll put my hat over here. Welcome, people. It's another beautiful Friday night. It was a beautiful day today. No snow, no ice, no black ice. That's important. If you've ever lived in Montana or Minnesota, Wisconsin, upper state New York, you know what black ice is. So be grateful you're in Southern California and you have maybe a little cold wind down in the 40s. Back where I come from in Wisconsin, when it got up to 40s, we consider that an Indian summer, and everybody went out in their T-shirts. 45 degrees, and we were out in our T-shirts. I toast to you, people that have watched all this time, and I want to thank you, Tammy and Oscar, who's out there watching. Oscar, a retired doctor, Tammy, a retired nurse. Why do I get all these medical people watching my show? Who else called me? Oh, Rudolph. Rudolph, so glad you got naturalized 30 years ago. I read your letter. Thank you very much. Some of you have said I seem to cover a lot of black people's issues. Well, it seems to me a lot of black people have issues the rest of us don't have to deal with. But, you know, where do they come from? What I would like to give you today, now, is a glimpse. I try to help people. We're going to go through some videos rapidly, but before we get there, I want to do my new State of the Union address. Yes. Okay. If I was President Trump, what would I say? Coming on early January, he gets out and he makes his State of the Union address. Now, of course, all regional newspapers and television corporate networks are going to trash him no matter what he says. They just hate him because he defeated the bank gangsters in getting elected, or at least we're left to think that's what he did. So here's my State of the Union message. If I was in President Donald Trump's position, I would announce that I'm going to keep a blockade on all federal jobs except those that send out the Social Security checks, those deal with emergency situations and national defense. Not only until the wall is finished, but until there's a surveillance system which will aid the wall and make the wall basically irrelevant. Then I would take all those troops standing around in about 15, 20 countries we don't need to have our troops in. I would bring those troops back and I'd line them up on the southern border. And I would say, we really mean, if you want to come to this country, massive tunnels all along the border to get people underneath the wall. So you need more than just a wall. You need a sensing system. And you know what? They've got digging equipment that's very quiet. So here's my proposal. Instead of all these people pour into our country, we simply charge a fee called a tariff on all the countries that are so bad to their people that they flee to America. And if those countries reach the top 5 positions, like Costa Rica, Honduras, or Venezuela, whatever the top 5 that are illegally bringing people into this country, we cut off all their foreign aid, even medical and mercenary foreign aid. We cut it all off. Then we take all the Federal Reserve's so-called reserves, which they in their phony paperwork calculate to be in the trillions, and we say, okay, we're paying off everybody in America's national portion of the debt. And we're paying off their home mortgage, we're paying off their student loans, we're going to pay off all their credit cards. Everybody gets a clean slate. Now this may sound like what I said 9 years ago in the opening you just saw, but there's a twist. If we run out of money to pay off everybody's debt, we then put a 100% tax on every bank gangster who owns the Federal Reserve. And no matter what country they're hiding in, whether it's Spain or Germany or London, England, or Paris, France, or wherever the Rothschilds and their gang of thieves are hiding, we just say, hey guys, we're coming to get you. We're sending the SEALs. We're sending our whole military. We're going to arrest you wherever you are. We're going to bring you back to the United States. We're going to hold you in FEMA camps where there won't be any butlers to make your bed and answer your door. You won't need a door. You'll have a jail cell. And we'll keep you there. We'll keep you bank gangsters in those FEMA camp jails. We'll make sure the temperature never gets too cold. We won't let it get below, 66. And we won't let it get above 69. So you'll always be cool until you cough up the trillions of dollars you've sucked out of America through multiple ways. Now, this may sound a little radical to you. Well, it is. I'm not apologizing for that. What William Wagener would do if I was Donald Trump, that's one of the things we would do. So all the bank gangsters, no matter what country they go hide in, we're going to get you. We don't care if it's one of our allies or one of our enemies. We're going to get you. We're going to drag you back. If there isn't enough money in the Federal Reserve phony baloney currency fiat system, then we go after you personally. We hold you in jail until you agree all the national debt is gone for our country. And here's the bonus. Here's the twist I didn't say 9 years ago. You must abolish the national debt for Germany and Greece and Slovakia and Bulgaria and every other country in the world. All their national debts disappear. Bingo. Then it's not just prosperity for America. It's prosperity for everyone around the world. And you other countries, remember, if you're in the top 5 of people flooding into America illegally or legally, either way, and you're not making your people happy, no aid from America, period, of any kind. So, with no military defense aid, nobody coming to rescue you, you'll figure out a way to take care of your own people. That's what I would do if I was in Donald Trump's position. But first, we do away with all our home mortgage loans, take all those attorneys that used to foreclose on people, pay judges under the table, and judges would no longer be allowed to have trusts. When judges have been on the bench for a while and they start doing illegal criminal things, what they do is they create a trust. So when they have to, at least in California, file a Form 700, which is a financial disclosure statement, they say, I own no stocks, I own no house, I own no real estate, I own no bonds, I own nothing. Why? Because everything went into a trust, and the trust is not assailable. Well, if I was President Trump, all those trusts would be immediately open, and we'd go back and see who had conflicts of interest in every case they had. Now, this is going to employ a lot of people, and we don't want to hire attorneys because we know they lie and we know they're crooked. We only have to look at what Jeff Sessions got away with before Trump finally fired him. The last thing I would do would say, Hillary, we're going to let you pick 12 people to be on your grand jury. And then we're going to pick your worst enemy, which isn't Donald Trump. And we're going to let them pick 12 people to be your grand jury. And then we're going to let the people, we the people, through our own national election, propose someone to be on that grand jury. And we'll form a grand jury of 36 people, and we'll go through all your emails. We'll find out what happened at Benghazi and why it happened. Why is actually more important than what happened. We all know our ambassador was murdered. We all know Hillary wouldn't let the SEAL team protect him. Now we're going to go find out why. Then heads will roll. Well, that's my State of the Union address. In summary, Trump has done a great deal to make America much better. But if we're going to really prosper America, we've got to get rid of the purveyors of fiat currency worldwide. Personally, I think we have enough jails in America. We could hold all the Rothschild bankers. We could hold the exchequers of the Bank of England and France and Germany and Spain. And the people in Greece are really screaming. They are suffering terribly under this so-called euro and union that the people didn't vote for. Let's stop playing games and pretending George W. Bush and George Herbert Walker Bush were good people. They're not. We need a special grand jury of we the people, not senators, not congressmen that can be bought off with fiat money. But once we've done away with the bankers, there won't be any fiat money. Then we the people can resurrect the real United States of America. The real one, not the corporate one run by the corporate shills and the corporate puppets. Nobody can do this job but all of us in we the people. We the people. Don't trust your county sheriff to do it. He's not trained to do it. He's just trained to execute judgments, arrest warrants, and that sort of thing. And by the way, Sheriff Bill Brown of Santa Barbara County, you ought to, on your own record, dispute with the DA of Santa Barbara, Joyce Dudley, whether the Quades, Randy Quaid, or them ever committed any crime. And have a special grand jury investigate this. Not a grand jury that's already been handpicked by a crooked judge in Santa Barbara, led by the nose by Joyce Dudley or Lee or Anthony Davis or Kelly Scott or any of those DAs in the DA's office. No, we need an outside attorney from outside the state to come in and objectively investigate how the Quades were stolen out of this country, how their house was stolen, how their money was stolen. We need justice for celebrities as well as we the people, the little people. And I hope all of you listening tonight, before the first of the year, and even if it's after the year when you first hear this, write the Santa Barbara District Attorney, her name is Joyce Dudley, ask her to stop being a dud and do her job. Look at the white-collar crimes committed in the theft of 1355 East Mountain Road in Montecito, which is still a part of Santa Barbara County. So I think I've covered all the bases. I'm going to take you on a little trip. We're going to go back, way back, a little bit at a time. Hope you enjoy this. I'm William Wagener for Take Back America, and you can help us do it.
Crash, that was good.
That was good. I read a part of your book, catching your electrician snoring. Was that something that happened often when you were early on? You catch people in the union not really enthusiastically going after their work?
Yeah, I came from Portland, Oregon, where everybody was trying hard to do their best, and I was shocked in New York City to discover there were some guys who just were going through the motions. And they didn't often snore, but that was a metaphor for the attitude.
I see. And you've been reading Reason magazine for how long?
About 15 years.
Has that made a big difference in your attitude?
Well, at the point where I was a confused kid trying to figure things out, it was wonderful to discover Reason and see, wow, these people really get it. This makes sense, and they have studied it more than I have.
Very good. Are you by chance moving in a libertarian direction? Are you going to turn into a libertarian at some point down the road here?
I think I've already done that.
You have. Are you by chance thinking of running for the vice presidential nomination of the Libertarian Party at the end of this month in Georgia?
No.
You're not. No one had posed that to you yet.
Some might have posed it, but I'm certainly not doing it.
Okay, you're not doing it. Let me ask one little short question. Where do you see yourself 10 years from now? Where's John Stossel going to be doing? What's he going to be doing 10 years from now?
I don't know. It's a fatal conceit to predict the future.
Okay. Thank you very much for these questions. I'm William Wagener for On Second Thought. Now we have a student editor who's got some questions of his own. Well, you may have recognized that guy. And where is he now? 14 years later. That was done in San Jose University in San Jose, California. That was John Stossel, in case you don't remember him. He used to be a frequent personality presenting issues of why the free market actually does work if government will just stay out of it and let it work. But you don't hear from him much anymore. And I thought I'd just let you see that. And there were people asking him if he would run for president or vice president as a libertarian, and they posed it to him, and no, he was not going down that. But his career went down anyway. Over here, underneath this little edifice, you see a picture taken quite a while ago. It's me in the middle, if you didn't notice the white guy in the middle with the white tie and the white hat. That's me with my favorite white hat, which someone took. I don't know where it is. And on my left is a black woman who was once married to the guy on the right. And they brought a lawsuit after appearing on my show for their son, this guy. Now, I'm not saying this guy was never a member of some kind of gang, but he didn't deserve to be beaten to death in a suburb jail of St. Louis by ex-cops who had lost their police certification. As a result of showing up on my show, they had an attorney get very interested in their case. And because of that YouTube clip, it's still on YouTube, that I did of them, that attorney won a multi-million-dollar judgment. Now, what's interesting to me is that, are there no television stations in St. Louis? Don't they have television in Chicago, which was a lot closer? Don't they have television in Denver, which was closer? But they had to come all the way from the Midwest out to California before anybody, and I was that anybody, yours truly here, put them on TV and gave them a chance to tell their side of the story. Once that was done, got it on YouTube, they got multi-million-dollar settlement, and it all went into a trust fund for their dead son who was murdered in the jail. And on that show, you can still find it on YouTube, I believe, we show why the video the jailers tried to say was their son wasn't their son. He was murdered. He was literally murdered in the jail over unpaid parking tickets, hundreds of them. And his father was busy, once he got arrested, trying to pay him off, this city, this county, that jurisdiction. But this jurisdiction, he had run out of money to pay off his son's tickets. Does that deserve a death sentence? And the sad part was he had left the gang life he'd been playing with, sort of on the fringes of a gang. He had left that life behind. He was now determined to be a good dad to his 3 kids. And that's when the jailers murder him. Sad. But the end result was we did him so good. I just want to say hello and to this guy you see here, the blonde guy. That's my son, Adam Wagener, when he was, I don't know, about 15 or 16. And that's my other son, Joshua, sitting on his shoulders. Joshua, I think now, is a doctor just finishing his medical residency. And Adam is doing real well out in Utah. And here's my other little group here. This is my youngest son, youngest of all my 7 children, in the middle, in the blue shirt. His name is Justin Che Wagener. And this is at a birthday party I threw for him back in the Midwest. Oh gosh, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years ago. And the only point I'm making out of this is there's a lot of good dads that try to be good dads. Their mother and their father's relationship went south, sometimes went through a real meat grinder. but you shouldn't take it out on your children. If a dad's trying to be a good dad, and I was, don't interfere. Let the good things happen. But Child Protective Services and child support don't make ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching all the bucks if dad gets to be a good dad. They want dysfunctional relationships between her and him, and usually she gets the kids, he gets the bills, and no time to see his kids. No time to be a real father, only time to be a visitor. Meanwhile, his children get slapped and beaten. And Justin, you can't see it in this picture, I went back to see him, and he had a big scar through his eyebrow. CPS didn't care. Child protectors didn't give a twit, didn't investigate. We know exactly which boyfriend his mother had done it. It wasn't me. I'm the real dad. But his mother got a boyfriend, and apparently a beer bottle was thrown and then thrown back, and it bounced off the wall, broke, and the beer bottle cut him in the eyebrow. Nothing was done. I was here in California. This was 2,500 miles away. I didn't find out about it until I went to visit my son. I'm not alone. There are millions upon millions of American dads being stripped of their fatherhood simply because the mother decides to be a biatch. Or he got drunk one night and went home with the wrong woman, and then she said, we're over it, this is done. Whatever brings it to you can't get along, don't let CPS take it out on the children. Don't let child support officials use the children as bartering chips. That's what they do. And frequently nowadays, it isn't just the mom they punish. First, they take the kid away from the dad and try to destroy the dad relationship. Then the next thing they do is try to take the kid away from the mom and give him to a foster molester. Thank God for people like Susan in Colorado, Arapahoe County, I think she lives. Susan Shell, I interviewed her once. We're not going to show you tonight, but she would go right into court with her camera rolling, with the judge saying, object, you can't do that. No. And she'd say, I'm taping this. You're letting a foster pedophile get away with stuff. Well, they finally found a way. I don't know if they put her in jail or what, but they kept threatening her, and she kept doing it and exposing the fathers and mothers that were abusing, foster fathers and mothers that were abusing children. Now, I'm not saying every foster parent is evil and bad, but it seems like there's a lot of pedophiles gravitate to this. And child support and child protective services don't care. They absolutely do no background check on these people. How do I know? Trust me, I know. I've talked to dozens, and you know what their excuse is? Well, we need more foster homes. If we started doing background checks, we might find something. And then, that would be an issue, that we know that these people are pedophiles. And we just got so many children coming into the system, we just got to find foster parents to stuff them with. And so if a kid gets complaining, oh, my foster mom's molesting me, I liked it better with my mom, and the girl said, she's still molesting me, they just move her to a different foster home, where maybe it'll be the foster father will be molesting or raping her, or her son. What they want is the federal funding. So President Trump, get the message, cut off all Title IV-D, cut off all federal funding to CPS and child support. Cut it all off. Let the counties and the states then have to bear that burden, and give every parent that loses a biological child, give them mandatory trial by jury. No shortcuts, no agreements, no settlements out of court. If you take the child, there should be, there must be a trial by a jury of other parents. Then we'll see how many children get snatched. Meanwhile, we need to arrest all those foster pedophiles and the CPS workers, CS workers, put them in jail. Now, here's an interesting thing. From October 11th, an assault. Last night, the ex-sheriff made a violent assault on District Attorney Dreitzer, resulting in Mr. Dreitzer getting quite severely bruised about the body. The cause of the attack is supposed to be an old feud existing between the parties. Sheriff was arrested by Sheriff Hoole this morning, who took him before the Justice Dresser. The examination is now in progress. February 28th, the following year, the following additional business has been transacted in the case disposed of at the February term of court since our last issue. O.E. Dreitzer versus William Wagener, assault. Judgment for plaintiff, $20 in costs. Oh, I forgot to tell you what year that was. The assault was October 10th, reported in the October 11th, 1877. And what this particular, but there's a lot more on this about Dreitzer and Sheriff Wagener, who was a one-term sheriff, and Hoole was the sheriff before him and the sheriff that came after him. Very interesting. It just happened to be my great-grandfather, who didn't like crooks in the district attorney's office. Still got that going in my blood. Now, Christmas time should be a happy time. I hope you find some joy somewhere this Christmas. But if you don't, go to my YouTube clip and put in Wagener Christmas, and you'll pull up a really pretty Christmas our family had a while back. Justin, wherever you are, I hope you're having a great Christmas. And Joshua Che, way to go, son. In spite of the system that tried to destroy you, you overcame it because you got it in your blood to come out on top. With that, I have another little clip going back a few years, and I think you'll find this interesting. Cheers.
Police chiefs, county sheriffs, IRS officials, CPAs, tax attorneys, and thousands of other government officials. Tonight, our servant government is being put on notice. Obey the Constitution of the United States and our Bill of Rights, or we, the people, will take whatever nonviolent measures that are necessary to bring you back under our control where you belong. America's founders clearly understood and accepted God's design and purpose for civil government, and were willing to sacrifice their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, everything they had, to be free. They established a constitutional republic that recognized the people's inalienable right to their lives, their liberty, and their property, with minimal government interference. Thus, America was conceived as a magnificent experiment in freedom that was unique in the annals of human history. And while the journey was tumultuous at times, the freedom won by our forefathers was ultimately extended to all citizens, regardless of their race, color, religion, or national origin, a testament to who we are as Americans and what we truly stand for as one nation under God. So what kind of government do we have in America today? Does our federal government function according to God's design and purpose? Do our federal, state, and local government officials defend and protect the most vulnerable among us from evil and injustice? Are the majority of our highest elected officials and government leaders in Washington honest, honorable, and loyal Americans who can be trusted to protect and defend our Constitution? Do our judges acknowledge God's ultimate authority over our nation and our nation's laws, or do they kneel at a different altar? Unlike most politicians, who seldom fight the wars that they start, those of us who have honorably served our nation in uniform have a special duty to protect America's future generations from the deception and the exploitation of false prophets in our government. There is no honor in the slaughter of innocent, helpless civilians for any political end. Our forefathers intended America to serve as an example of strength and justice and liberty to the world. And we must recognize that the powerful political and economic interests that have dragged America into war after senseless war over the past 50 years have betrayed the ideals, the honor, and the values of our forefathers, and have compromised the sovereignty and independence of our great nation. Their perfidious conduct is repugnant to our Constitution and the principles upon which we stand as a nation. For over 200 years, America has stood as a beacon of light and hope to the world. People of all nations, creeds, and religions have come to our shores yearning to be free. The cause of enduring freedom belongs to us all as Americans. But we the people must demand honest, just, and accountable government, or we cannot hope for God's continued blessing upon our nation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a critical juncture in the history of our republic. Our Constitution and Bill of Rights are hanging by a thread. America, as envisioned by our founders and preserved by the blood of those who have fought to keep us free, will not survive without constant vigilance by we the people. Today, the majority of our elected representatives, our judges, and the heads of our federal law enforcement agencies are systematically and with impunity violating their oaths of office. They have betrayed their sworn and sacred obligation to support and defend our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Every day, more and more of our people are being denied equal justice in our courts, protection of our private property, and respect for our inalienable rights and dignity as free Americans. We have allowed career politicians, government bureaucrats, and federal judges to gradually assume vast power that were not delegated to them by we the people in our Constitution. If America is to survive as the hope of the world, we must resolve to bind our government down once again by the chains of our Constitution and Bill of Rights. Let me give you an example of what has been happening behind the scenes in our nation's capital. On October the 3rd, 2002, just this past autumn, in a public recorded debate on the floor of the House of Representatives, Congressman Ron Paul of Texas reminded Congressman Henry Hyde of Illinois, the chairman of the House Committee on International Relations, that the Constitution requires a declaration of war before the armed forces of the United States can be deployed in hostilities overseas. In response to Congressman Paul, Congressman Hyde then had this to say about our Constitution and Bill of Rights, and I quote, "There are things in the Constitution that have been overtaken by events, by time. There are things that are no longer relevant to a modern society. There are things that are inappropriate, anachronistic." End quote. To those of us who love our country, who honor and cherish the ideals and principles upon which our great nation was established, we must ask ourselves, how have we come to this point where our government leaders can openly express such contempt and disrespect for our Constitution and our God-given rights as Americans? To the millions of military veterans, law enforcement officials, and other patriotic Americans who have taken an oath to support and defend our Constitution, Congressman Hyde's comments should be viewed as nothing less than treason. But tragically, the majority of our elected representatives in both political parties, as well as all the powerful financial special interests that control them, share Congressman Hyde's arrogance and his disrespect for our Constitution. These people have come to believe that our Constitution is a dead letter, that our sacred Bill of Rights is anachronistic and irrelevant in our modern times, that America's independence as a sovereign nation and our tradition of personal freedom should be exchanged for membership in a new world order. A new world order that despises our faith in God, our constitutional form of government, and our inalienable freedom as Americans. I proudly served our country as an officer in the United States Marine Corps, and like millions of American veterans, intend to keep my oath to support and defend the Constitution and protect our nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic, including politicians and government officials like Congressman Hyde, who have no respect for our Constitution and Bill of Rights. While average Americans have been preoccupied with earning a living, raising our children, In trying to be law-abiding citizens, our government for decades has been diligently working behind the scenes to assume more and more power and control over our daily lives. Working Americans have been economically enslaved by a fraudulent income tax system that steals fruits of our labor and squanders our financial resources on unconstitutional government programs, aid to corrupt foreign governments, and preemptive military intervention all across the globe. It's sad but true, the average American family today pays more in taxes than it pays for food and clothing and shelter combined. After years of exhaustive legal research and public hearings in Washington, D.C., We the People Foundation has irrefutably proven that our personal income tax system in America is fraudulent in its origin and illegal in every aspect of its operation. Our personal income tax system is immoral, it is unjust, and it is dishonest. It is not required to fund the lawful constitutional functions of our government. Our elected officials are well aware that they have other constitutional means, such as excise taxes, corporate taxes, tariffs, imposts, and duties, to raise sufficient revenue for the legitimate operations of government. So why do our government leaders allow this fraud to continue against the working people of America? Simply stated, it is nothing more than greed and the desire for absolute political power and authority over the people. Let's be clear, the fruits of our labor do not belong to Caesar, and we are not commanded by our Creator to kneel before false idols or submit to civil government that is immoral, coercive, and unjust. The personal income tax system in America undermines everything that we stand for as a free people. For the past 3 years, We the People Foundation has been fighting to abolish this illegal direct tax on the labor of working Americans. For those of you who have stood with us in our efforts to restore our Constitution and Bill of Rights, we thank you for your integrity, for courage, and for your sacrifice. We must never forget that in America, like no other country in history,
I think we're going to start. We got audience here. Iron on me out. Should we find some food down there? Where should we eat? Oh, there's that food.
Here's the Raging Grandmothers in downtown San Francisco, and they're angry. A lot of these grandmothers have already lost a son, a grandnephew, or a nephew in this war, and they're not happy about it. Listen to them sing and protest.
Welcome to the the granny boyfriends and husbands passing out lyrics. And walking the dog. Walking the dog. And number 2, the little mouse. Dana's going to give us a one-line introduction. Dana, please.
Well, that was the Raging Grannies from San Francisco, and yours truly was there to get them on the air. They had been going around to many large cities protesting George W. Bush's war. And why? Because he was the president who says, elect me, oh, keep us out of war. And then boom, just like Wilson, as soon as he's elected, into war he charges. Wars are always used to make money for the bank gangsters, kill our sons and daughters, and kill millions of other innocent people who just get in the way. World War I was for that reason. In fact, actually, even the Civil War didn't need to happen. There's a myth that has grown over a century now that the Civil War was fought because we had to free the black slaves. The one big fact is they don't talk about the morale tax, and they don't point out the fact that the cotton gin had been invented and made slavery virtually too expensive. Why hire 100 slaves to be a problem and they run away and you got to feed them and clothe, when one cotton gin could do the work of 100 slaves? And slaves were expensive to buy, to feed, and to keep them from running away. The Civil War didn't need to happen. That the slaves were freed, I'm very glad, very happy about it. Glad they got something out of it. But what we got, the taxpayers at that time, back in the 1860s into the 70s, was the creation in 1871 of the corporate United States, and it's been all downhill from then. And yet, nevertheless, there were presidents that kept the central bankers from taking over America till Wilson went in. back around 1910 or so, the Wilson administration, and he was so old and senile, he didn't even realize he'd sold out America. He'd committed treason, but on his deathbed, he got it. And he made this statement, "I am so regretful that I have sold out my own country." Words to that effect. That's not an exact quote, but words to that effect. Anyway, with that done, and that's why that little clip opened in silence. You didn't miss anything. There wasn't anything really important to hear. But I wanted you to see grandmothers were taken to the streets to protest George W. Bush's war. Did you see that on corporate media? No. Did you see that on a 60-minute special? No. Did you see it on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, CNN? No. I'm happy you tuned in, and I hope you find me at least entertaining, if not thought-provoking. But it's time for us to form our own grand juries. Larry Klayman has promised several people he's coming back to California to form those grand juries, or at least one in Orange County, because there's a lot of people that need to be indicted who used to be in the DA's office, not just in Santa Barbara County, in Ventura County, in Orange County, in LA County. You'd be hard-pressed to find any county in California with more than a population of more than 100,000 where there isn't such terrible corruption. The only thing to be done is to form we the people grand juries led by a bona fide member of the bar who understands that when he gets done arresting all these criminals, a lot of them are attorneys, his career as a member of the bar will be over. But the service he will do to restore and make America great again will never be forgotten in the lifetime of the people. When you see the real America freed from excruciating taxation, and I'm not going to go into all the list of taxes, I want to tell you about another guy I met, I interviewed, I taped him, but this guy traveled across the country. His name was Bob Schultz, or Robert Schultz. He came from somewhere in upstate New York, and he came all across the country again and again, trying to restore and make America great. He starved himself to death on Constitution Avenue in the District of Criminals, otherwise known as Washington, D.C., for I don't know how many weeks. Literally sat there in his van and handed out pamphlets trying to get congressmen to pay attention. None of them cared. They're all bought off by the bank gangsters, which is why in my 2019 State of the Address that I just gave you about an hour ago, I said we need to use the expeditionary forces of the American military to go and arrest the bank gangsters, no matter where they are in the world. If we can arrest one American in Afghanistan, tie him up naked to a cot and bring him back and put him on trial for treason, we can certainly arrest the bank gangsters. We know where they are. We know who they are. We just need to properly apply the military. I hope Trump does that. At least I got to give Trump credit for a couple of things. One, he pardoned the Hammonds up in Oregon, the ranchers who did nothing but an ordinary controlled burn. And for that, they ended up spending months and got out of jail. And then the vicious, nasty U.S. prosecutor went back to the judge and said, no, it's arson terrorism. And so they didn't burn anybody's house, explode any, like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney did to the Twin Towers. He didn't do anything like that. All they did is burn weeds on land that most of us will never, ever see or care about, except it was connected to the Uranium One scandal and Hillary selling a certain percentage of all our uranium minerals to Russia. So they wouldn't sell their ranch. And because they wouldn't sell the ranch, the Hammonds ended up spending a couple of years. Trump pardoned them. Thumbs up for Donald Trump. He pardoned the Hammonds, even though the family suffered tremendously and is still suffering. So with that said, I want you to hear Bob Schultz, another unsung hero. I'm not even sure he's still alive. I wanted to bring you Hoppy Heidelberg, who passed away 4 years ago. We have him on tape. He's the guy who said to the FBI, I want to see the witnesses. I want to question, we're the grand jury, we want to question the witnesses directly. And if you didn't know how screwy that grand jury, government FBI-run grand jury was, the grand jury would be given evidence, the grand jury would write down questions, the FBI would go to the jail where they were holding McVeigh and Nichols, ask them the question, and allegedly write down their answer and bring it back and give it to the grand jury. Well, Hoppy Heidelberg, God bless you, Mr. Heidelberg of Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, at rest in May of, I guess, 2014, or 2012, I think it was 2012. God bless you, Hoppy Heidelberg. You did a great public service. Your name should be on a monument at the Oklahoma bombing site. Not all this fake crap that the government has put there, and they want you to go and get all sad and look at the names of the dead. What they won't tell you, it was a government operation. That's why the third, or they call John Doe number 2, they would never call him in, never let him talk to the grand jury. Hoppy Heidelberg demanded to talk to the witnesses face to face, is what a grand jury is supposed to do. That's exactly what the grand jury is supposed to do. The judge, that crooked judge, I think his name was Russell, God rot his soul, he said, okay, you're off the grand jury, Hoppy Heidelberg. And if you ever tell anybody anything about any of this, you're going to do 6 months in jail for every time you open your mouth. Well, Hoppy Heidelberg talked to me first, and he talked to everybody. And I have all video all that. God bless you, Hoppy Heidelberg. May you rest in peace until you're called to your glory. Now, here's Bob Schultz, a man who really tried, gave it his all. Here we go.
225 years ago. In a republic such as we have here in America, every one of our citizens, regardless of his or her race, religion, political influence, social status, or economic station in life, has unalienable, constitutionally protected rights that cannot be lawfully abridged by a power-hungry government. And it is those who are most vulnerable to the abuses of democratic mob rule and governmental tyranny who are most protected by our Republican form of government. We remember those occasions in modern history when democratically elected governments have violated their citizens' most basic rights to life, liberty, and property because a majority of the population found it acceptable. In America, there are only two things that stand between the people and governmental tyranny: our Constitution and our will as a free people to protect and defend it. The Liberty Hour is dedicated to the defense of our Constitution and the protection, preservation, and enhancement of our individual unalienable rights, liberties, and freedoms. Foremost among the tools we have in our possession is the unalienable right to petition an out-of-bounds government for a redress of grievances. In America, the right to petition our government for a redress of grievances is the basis of our liberty. Our founders explicitly recognized this right in the First Amendment to our Constitution, for they understood that without it, we could not have a servant government whose power is defined and limited by the consent of the people. Think about it. We have all those rights we often hear about: the right to worship and speak freely, to keep and bear arms, to property and privacy, to equal protection and due process, to juries and speedy trials, and so forth. But what if government infringed on those rights and we did not have the right to petition for a redress of those grievances? then in effect, you would not have those rights, right? That's how important the right to petition for redress of grievances is. It's that basic to the protection of our liberty. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution states clearly and unambiguously, and I quote, "Congress has no law, shall make no law, abridging the right of the people to petition the government for a redress of grievances." While some rights are reserved with qualifications in the Bill of Rights, there are none whatsoever pertaining to the right of redress. There are no limits to the right of redress. Any constitutional offense is legitimately petitionable. Is it possible that government might choose to ignore the people's petitions for redress of grievances? Yes, of course. After all, government gets down to people, and people suffer from human frailties, like the love of money and power. The Founding Fathers were well acquainted with the fact that government, human, is the enemy of freedom, that those wielding governmental power despise petitions from the people, and that the representatives of the people in a popular assembly, such as Congress and our state legislatures, seem sometimes to fancy that they are the people themselves, and exhibit strong symptoms of impatience and disgust at the least sign of opposition from any quarter. The Founding Fathers knew that it was possible for the institutions of the Congress, the executive, and the courts to someday begin to fail in their duty to protect the people from tyranny. The Founding Fathers also knew that unless the right to petition included the right to withhold their money from the government until their grievances were redressed, their grievances might fall on deaf ears.
And I ask you people, have they fallen on deaf ears? Do we still care about our Constitution? I would ask you, plead with you, if you're under the age of 70 and still able to read, think, and write, get a copy of the Constitution and just read the Bill of Rights. Note that the actual Constitution is fairly short. The Bill of Rights was added after the United States had been made a more perfect union, because there were gangster agents even back then in the 1790s, 1780s that hated the Bill of Rights. But there were a few states that said, we won't join, we won't stay in the Union unless these are all adopted. And there was 2 or 3 that they wanted adopted that didn't get adopted. But when these first 10 made it through and got adopted, the Union held. And the United States of America has enshrined these rights. Yet there are people in a political party that think your Second Amendment doesn't matter anymore. It's archaic. No, it is not. There was a rapist in LA who had raped and murdered, I forget, a dozen young women. And this one young woman was engaged, and her fiance bought and gave her a gun and said, here's a gun. If you have any trouble, shoot it. Well, the police, 5,000-man army, could not find this rapist. When he approached this young woman, she ran, got in her car, locked the door, and he came up to the door and said, open the window, and he pointed a gun at her. Instead of opening the window, she got the gun her fiance had given her, and he shot the guy, the rapist, who had already killed about 12 women. That's what the Second Amendment was intended, so you can defend yourself when the police aren't around. And guess what? Look at your average day, unless you are a policeman. Look at your average day and count the minutes you actually see a policeman where you could yell to him and say, help. That's why the Second Amendment. Yet there's a political party screaming, we must get rid of the Second Amendment. We must take away your right to own guns. Bit by bit, they want to take it away. Now, I think the bump stock thing is probably a good law, but you know, and Reagan, Trump is going to put that through. Trump's done some other good things. You know, he did away with the mandatory prison for people that couldn't, too poor to afford Obamacare. And he just did something yesterday on Thursday. I can't remember, but it was wonderful that he did it. And I was just like, wow. Anyway, I want to take you now to show you how they dumb us down. They put fluoride in our water. And even the president of the Canadian Dental Association finally admitted, came public. Yet many cities, including Santa Maria, which once voted down fluoride, are now poisoning our people with dirty fluoride that comes as an excess waste product from manufacturing. And they're putting it in your water and telling you it's good for the children's teeth. It's not. It's bad for them, and it kills the brain cells, causes autism, all kinds of problems, and the AMA just can't tell us the truth. That's really sad, in my opinion. Roll camera.
With poisonous, call it fluoride, but
George Glasser showed me a list of all the contaminants in one of the articles he wrote, and I could not believe that we were actually dumping lead and arsenic and even radium, which is produced in the process of making this pollutant.
Why be concerned?
Cancer, hip fracture, dental fluorosis, spots on the teeth, neurological impairment, lower IQ in children, learning disorders.
Fluoride science is corporate science. Fluoride science is DDT science. It's asbestos science. It's tobacco science. It's a racket.
From what I understand, the pollutant is recovered from the smokestack scrubbers in the phosphate fertilizer industry, and it's very rich in fluoride, very toxic.
The senior toxicologist for the EPA's Office of Water said that the cancer tests that had been done on fluoride, where laboratory animals were given fluoride, he said that those results had been gerrymandered. He said that fluoride given to rats had produced bone cancer and liver cancer, and that those results had been doctored to make it look as though fluoride hadn't caused as much cancer.
The dark circles in this chart show that the cancer rate in fluoridated cities kept climbing while it slowed down in the non-fluoridated cities during the 1950s.
Phyllis Mullinax found that fluoride in very modest doses produces effects in laboratory animals resembling attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder.
The pattern that we saw, it typically is what we see with other neurotoxic agents that are well known to cause a hyperactivity or a memory problem or an IQ problem.
Women over 65 who had hip fractures, and they obtained the data from every hospital in the United States. So we're talking about 560,000 women. And they have data on all of these, and they looked at where they came from and whether the water was fluoridated or not, and they found that the people, there was a much higher incidence of hip fractures where the water was fluoridated versus the places that didn't have fluoride in the water.
3 trial judges since 1978 made findings of fact that water fluoridation poses an unreasonable risk to the American people.
This severe risk looming over our heads to go ahead and fluoridate the water where everyone is being exposed to it in an uncontrolled situation, in an uncontrolled dose. It's totally illogical to be putting fluoride into our drinking water.
The standard that EPA has set for fluoride in drinking water is 4 milligrams per liter. And we've talked to the people who helped write that standard, and they have told us that they were lying when they did it. When they wrote the standard, they were basically ordered to lie.
This 50-year study in New Zealand shows no effect of fluoridation on the rate of decline in dental cavities.
The dental community has no idea of the toxicology behind fluoride.
It all adds up very clearly in my mind to putting this stuff in the drinking water is, in essence, just a hazardous waste management tool. It has nothing to do with dental health whatsoever.
For more information, read The Fluoride Deception by Christopher Bryson, or check into the Fluoride Action Network at www.fluoridealert.org.
I hope you check out Fluoride Alert. And there was another book by a dentist which I had a copy. I don't know where it is. It's a great book. It really goes into detail to showing why fluoride does not protect your teeth. It makes them brittle. It makes them brittle. It doesn't reduce teeth decay. It damages the brain, especially if you give it to young children while the brain is developing. And you wonder why the kids can't get it and they have short attention spans. And the autistic rate has gone from almost imperceptible to huge numbers of children being born autism. That's fluoride at work. And there are parts of the country where the water is naturally heavily fluoridated out of the ground, and they should be taking the fluoride out. And then they come to some place like California where we don't have fluoride, and they dump it in our water and poison us. Well, there's a really good show on my other show. This is Take Back America. The other one's On Second Thought. Now on Saturdays, my show airs at 7:30. And today's the 21st, first day of winter of 2018. Tomorrow night, on the second day of winter, on the 22nd, you don't want to miss this. Call your neighbors, have them come over. It starts at 7:30. It's my Christmas special, and it'll run all the way to the end of December. You want to see this, people. It runs Saturday at 7:30, then Sunday, then again Monday. You'll have to look at channel 25 and scroll ahead, see when it is. Monday, Tuesday at 7:30 again, and then it runs Wednesday, I believe, Thursday at 7:30, and then Saturday again, and then it's gone. It's funny. This is not a serious show tomorrow night. It's I think it's one of the funniest shows I've ever done, and I'm not a funny guy, but that show was funny. So with that, I have another clip for you, and stick around. It's going to be good right to the end. And when the marriage ended, you had how many children by her?
2 daughters.
And you just bought a new house, is that right?
Yeah, just shortly, well, maybe within a few months before the marriage.
So you got a big, beautiful house. You both signed for the mortgage, and then she filed for divorce.
Yeah.
And is she looking for another husband right now?
No, I understand she does have some other relationship going, though. Not sure how that works out.
And do you get to see your children as often as you like?
No, nowhere near. I've probably missed the better part of half their lives. Right now I'm down to once a week, 1 hour visitation, which I have to pay $50 for, and I make 2 phone calls a week.
Is this fair?
Absolutely not.
Is this the America you thought you were growing up and raising children in?
No. I mean, this is totally unnatural.
Who's making the money in this? The divorce industry? The ex-wives? Who's got an incentive to keep it unfair?
I'm not sure. It's got to be politics. It's got to be the industry making a profit on this. We've had a case here recently where it was found that child support, at least in the Chicago metro area, wasn't going to the families and to the children. It was ending. The greater part of it was ending up in others' hands. There was a big investigation on that issue. I honestly believe a lot of my, a great deal of the money that I'm not really sure where it goes. How much it ends up in the hands of my ex and my children is beyond me.
Now, is your ex-wife still living in the house that you bought with her?
No. She's currently living in Woodstock, same in the circuit that our court case is involved.
So you weren't able to hang on to the new house right after she filed the divorce?
No, it was a real struggle trying to maintain 2 households, pay for all that, and what I understand is atypical in a lot of contested divorces. The house is lost. It's nothing new to the courts.
How are your daughters doing with this divorce? How old are they now?
They're now, my eldest is 10, and the other one, Abby and Elizabeth, 9 and 10. And they're not doing extremely well. I think that what went on during the separation affected them greatly, and I believe the alienation, which is really, really severe in this issue, with my children, and I've been trying to raise it with the courts, is doing damage, and I'm trying to put a stop to it. But courts
I didn't give you his name on purpose. That was a man about more than a decade ago. He's in a suburb of Chicago. Terrible things. And one of these days, I would not be surprised if a revolution breaks out in America. I mean, a really violent one, because we can't vote in change for the good. I would not be shocked if a violent revolution broke out and Child Protective Services, foster molesters, and other people connected with the organized government kidnapping of children results in the deaths of tens of thousands of former government workers and active government workers. You mess with somebody's children, destroy their lives, turn them into debt slaves, let a BH or a nasty man run away. Sometimes it's a nasty man gets the child, but most often it's the woman. It swings both ways these days. And we need to fix it. I don't know how we're going to fix it. Dan Debo was a guy in Texas who fought for custody and won. His wife was a doctor. He had a PhD and a very highfalutin job with a big corporation. And Dan Debo, all by himself, argued against 3 attorneys his doctor wife had, and he defeated all 3 attorneys, got custody of his kids in Texas, moved to Michigan. He had complete charge of his 2 children, 1 son, 1 daughter, was working, and his wife gives up her practice in Texas, comes to Michigan, nestles in, goes to a Michigan judge, and gets the children. That story, here's a word from Dan Debo, way back like 10, 12 years ago.
It's got a bad memory for them, I suppose.
Who was the judge on that case in Texas?
The judge in the case in Texas was Dean Huckleby. I don't believe he's still on the bench anymore. He's retired.
Did he make any verbiage in his closing remarks after the jury verdict came in that he might consider setting aside the jury verdict?
Absolutely not. There were multiple. There were probably a half dozen different devices used to attack the jury verdict and the award of custody. And even when all those were exhausted, there was delay introduced to try and prevent the judgment from being entered. Every single attempt was denied by the judge, and the order did enter, giving me custody of the children. The interesting thing is that after the jury verdict came, there were allegations basically going on an ongoing basis. Every single allegation stopped as soon as the jury rendered their verdict. There were no further allegations, and there never have been any since.
So this judge came to the right conclusion. He didn't try to overturn it. Would you say he treated you with respect even though you were defending yourself in pro se?
Initially, I had a very difficult time pro se. Part of it was my own difficulty understanding the more formal process that's used in Texas. There was also a master used. It's kind of like a referee for the initial parts of the hearing. I lost a lot of battles. I had a very difficult time, but eventually, by the time we got to the trial court, I had adjusted my procedure to conform to all the formalities of the court, and I had spent thousands of hours on my case. I was almost indistinguishable from one of the other attorneys, the children's attorneys, or my ex-wife attorney in my presentation to the court.
Did the attorneys during That was Dan Debo, formerly of Texas, then formerly of Michigan. His sons, I believe, went to college at UW Milwaukee or UW Madison, Wisconsin, and he then moved there. But once they were adult, he had to re-attach himself to his children, who were kidnapped. They literally went to high school one day and didn't come back because the mother got one of these sneaky judge orders that was full of lies, and they just grabbed the kids, and he was cut off for a couple of years. Once they turned adults, Dan went to reattach himself to his children. There are a lot of good fathers that have been really wronged by the system, and some good mothers that have been wronged by the system, and sometimes both parents. We need to fix that. Only you can do it. We, the people, need our own grand juries, not run by our crooked court system. Go back to October 11th, 1877. We're going to close with a trip about a little blurb here about 9/11. October 11th, 1877. Assault. Last night, ex-sheriff Wagener, that's William J. Wagener, made a violent assault on O.E. Dreitzer, resulting in Mr. Dreitzer getting quite severely bruised about the body. The cause of the attack is supposed to be an old feud existing between the parties. Wagener was arrested by Sheriff Hoole this morning, who took him before Justice Dresser. The examination is now in progress. Later, Dreitzer's father was the presiding judge. That's an interesting case. You rarely see sheriffs beating up the district attorney. Maybe we need to go back to those days, because the DAs are so crooked in this county. They indicted Michael Jackson, the most innocent defendant I have ever seen. And I've been to hundreds and hundreds of court cases. And a jury of mostly white, mostly elderly people, like the way I appear today, found Michael Jackson not guilty on 10 felonies and 4 misdemeanors, and the jury should have had the power immediately to indict the prosecutor for presenting false evidence and being caught with false evidence, and then indict the witnesses for lying on the stand. Unfortunately, since the bar-carded criminals run the justice system, that's not part of our law. We need to fix that. We need to change that and make America great again. It's time for some music. It's that time of year. Anyway, we're going to close now. I thank you for being with us. Remember, Saturday night, 7:30, you want to tune in for On Second Thought, because you're going to see the funniest On Second Thought you've ever seen. Donald Trump might even make an appearance. I'm William Wagener. Here's a bit raised. This little clip we're going to end with was done with 2 young guys out of San Diego, I think. And there was a guys in the East Coast that made this. It's called Loose Change, 2nd edition. And one of the guys was actually held in a military prison for putting this out until he recanted and said it was all lies. It wasn't lies. It was the truth. Here you go. Only from here.
Flight 93 was en route from New Jersey to California with 45 passengers when it went off course at 8:56 over Cleveland, Ohio. According to the official story, Flight 93 was headed for the White House when it was overpowered by a group of passengers and crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Out of all of the events of 9/11, the one that has caused the most confusion is Flight 93. It was shot down, it wasn't shot down. However, evidence suggests that perhaps Flight 93 was nowhere near Shanksville.
I want to get quickly to Chris Kanicki. He's a photographer with the Pittsburgh affiliate of Fox affiliate. He was back there just a couple of minutes ago, and Chris, I've seen the pictures. It looks like there's nothing there except for a hole in the ground.
Basically, that's right. The only thing you could see from where we were was a big gouge in the earth and some broken trees. We could see some people walking around in the area, but from where we could see, there wasn't much left.
Any large pieces of debris at all?
No, there was nothing that you could distinguish that a plane had crashed there.
Smoke, fire?
Nothing. It was absolutely quiet. It was actually very quiet. Nothing going on down there, no smoke, no fire, just a couple of people walking around. They look like part of the NTSB crew walking around looking at the pieces.
How big would you say that hole was?
From my estimates, I would guess it was probably about 20 to 15 feet long and probably about 10 feet long or 10 feet wide.
What could you see on the ground, if anything, other than dirt and ash? And
you couldn't see anything. You could just see dirt, ash, and people walking around, broken trees.
Wally Miller, a Somerset County coroner, told the Houston Chronicle, "It looked like somebody just dropped a bunch of metal out of the sky." In the Washington Post, "It looked like someone took a scrap truck, dug a 10-foot ditch, and dumped trash into it." And as for the passengers, I stopped being coroner after about 20 minutes because there were no bodies there. In the Pittsburgh Review, I have not, to this day, seen a single drop of blood. Not a drop. It would seem that on one day, for the second time in history, an entire plane, along with its passengers, disappeared upon impact.
No signs of any survivors at the site of a Nigerian plane crash. That is the word from the Red Cross, which has a representative on site. The first pictures of the crash scene show a large crater with the Boeing 737 broken into small pieces. The plane crashed shortly after taking off from Lagos in a heavy storm. The flight was going to the Nigerian capital of Abuja and was believed.
At 11:43 on September 11th, WCPO, a local TV station in Cincinnati, Ohio, reported that 2 planes landed at Cleveland Hopkins Airport due to a bomb threat. United Airlines identified one of the planes as